Welcome back to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This edition is made possible by CARTS, the Corporation for Automated Road Transportation Safety, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to safe and high-quality mobility for all. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Hey, good evening, Fred.
Good evening, and we're catching you soon after your return from Washington, D.C., and you went to Washington soon after getting back from Las Vegas, and you're about to depart for Kenya.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yep. No. Yes, it's whirlwind, but very exciting. Haven't been. Expect to learn just an enormous amount, and can't wait to just learn.
That is just terrific. Well, we have more interviews from CES to feature in this episode. Stay tuned for that, with lots of help, of course, from our friend Ken Pyle at Vioti. But first, some headlines from the latest Smart Driving Cars newsletter. On top, Alain, the University at Buffalo is issuing a request for proposals for self-driving shuttle vehicles and operations in the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus and surrounding neighborhoods. The project is being funded by the U.S. Department of Transportation. We've got a friend out there, don't we?
Yes, we do, and that's Dr. Steve Still, who basically endowed who endowed the University of Buffalo Transportation Program a few years ago, and is there as a faculty member, and is really trying to do for Buffalo, in some sense. Some things similar to what we're trying to do in Trenton with Trenton Moves. That is, provide mobility, high quality mobility, affordable mobility to people who have been really left behind by the mobility that we all take for granted in some sense, and really looking at the transportation disadvantaged in the Buffalo area and trying to bring mobility to them. So kudos to Steve, and kudos to what they're trying to do there, and we wish them well.
Yeah, and we'll follow, of course, what happens with the RFP. ZF has unveiled its next generation shuttle in Las Vegas, designed for urban environments and mixed traffic. You have some thoughts here?
Yeah, and it's a nice vehicle. It's to get there, had a similar vehicle that they had in the personal rapid transit world at Masdar, and I think this is an evolution of that vehicle to not to work beyond exclusive places and exclusive roadways, to also operate driverlessly in mixed traffic. So kudos to their efforts there. And make a few comments. The vehicle is on the large size for places in which one has the demand to be able to have the vehicle at least partially filled much of the time. Then of course, the places that we've been looking at things. The temporal spatial character of travel demand is such that most of the time it's very diffuse, and it's a challenge to be able to create a situation in which people actually have the opportunity to travel together. And so if we can create a mechanism by which they would want to travel together, then the opportunity to have ride sharing, real ride sharing, with what I call casual ride sharing. It's with people who aren't associated and don't necessarily know each other. They just happen to be wanting to go from about the same place to about the same place in about the same direction at about the same time. And that a highly dimensional spatial temporal distribution of transportation demand is such that most of the time during the day there are few people that want to go between two places at the same time. And sometimes, sure, maybe, going to school in the morning and coming home from school in the evening, or going to the train station and coming from the train station, or going to a very large workplace and coming home from a very large workplace. Yes, but most of the rest of the travel demand is really diffuse. And those that I just mentioned happen to be hub and spoke type things. So they're from one place to many, or many to one. There are very few places in which there are a lot of people that want to go between 2 points. So if one is really looking to try to provide mobility across the demand spectrum, one has to have the flexibility to respond to the demand, as opposed to trying to make the demand respond to the supply side. I mean, if you can get the demand to respond to the supply side, then everything's easy. Hey, you just run here on the schedule, boom, make everybody live here and work there. So far, that hasn't been the way most people try to live their lives. So, this sort of battle between the supply and demand, what the customers want versus what you can offer. The real opportunity of automation, it allows you to take the supply side and match it up much better to the demand side. And when you do that, you see that probably you should be doing that with small vehicles, not big vehicles. Why? Because there aren't all that many people who want to travel and join in the vehicle most of the time. And so you like to have little packets that you'd like to be able to manage around, to be able to serve the demand as it gets created, which is all the concepts that we have embedded in things like the Trenton Moves concept, is to really get a system through automation that is able to shape itself to meet the demand, therefore providing high quality. Of course, then the advantage, and where automation, really shines, is that now you need many automated drivers. But my goodness, that's what Moore's law is all about. You sort of create it for one, and then you replicate it, and replicate it again, and replicate it again, and replicate it again. So you go from 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64 to 256, and all of a sudden you have exponential growth, which does what? Makes the unit cost go to zero. Okay, if you're just making a couple of these things, boy, it's expensive. If all of a sudden you're just getting a couple to work and replicating, wow, things get really interesting. Well, at least that's the bubble, or the ship that we've been riding on in the last 50 years or whatever of the digital revolution. I mean, that's how we got here. And so, to bring that to mobility, but then that implies that you're going to have small ones. And so if you really want to be successful, I think you try to do small ones, but you really have to scale. You have to make many. You have to do a lot. But guess what? There are a lot of trips every day.
Moving on. There was a report in the Wall Street Journal headlined, "You may be able to buy a self-driving car after all." And this ran during CES, and this talks about the concept vehicles at the show from Stellantis and Sony with its partner Honda, etc.
Yeah, well, it also depends on what you mean by self-driving. If you mean by self-driving what we call self-driving, which is really what other people consider level 2 or whatever, which is a system that gives you comfort and convenience. Heck, you can go out there and buy that right now. People are buying it right now. Mobileye has 3.5 billion in booked business to deliver some of that stuff. And absolutely. But if you mean by self-driving that you sit there and you're chauffeured around, and there's no driver or driverless, and you're going to buy one of these things, well, don't hold your breath. It is not going to happen soon. Chances of me seeing,
for a bunch of reasons, right?
it's too hard. And why? Do you really want to buy it? You really want to get in the Airbnb business of having a vehicle and you send it out to give people rides and you're going to be responsible for that? Really? You want to be in that business? Really? Really? I think, what the car industry has done for all this is that they've put it into our brains that we really like to drive and want to drive, at least some of the time. And now all of a sudden, BMW is going to have, instead of the ultimate driving machine, they're going to have the ultimate riding machine. Really? I don't believe it. Okay. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it.
Meanwhile, you highlight some Tesla updates, expansion in Texas. It's become the top luxury auto brand in the US now, and Tesla vehicles moved nearly 100,000 people inside Boring Company tunnels at CES. You got to look at that.
Yeah, we got to look at that. And we got a good look at that with the head of the Boring Company there in Seattle, who's implemented that. And it's a small system right now. It's just a line haul with 4 stations, I guess. But their plans is to build a whole network of these things that serve, from the city of Las Vegas to the airport and basically up and down the strip. And people were getting on and off, and using it during CES. And the interesting thing about the 100,000 person trips during that, during basically a 4-day period, that means, they were serving 25,000 person trips a day, for what, 12 hours a day, or let's even call it 24 hours a day, in which, that's an average of 1,000 per hour if you for the whole 24. But there's tails on that stuff probably. So during the heavy periods, they must have been serving about 2,000 person trips an hour. Now they have
Wow.
2 ways and so on, so it's 1,000 per direction. So
I mean, did it make
they
a
were
dent, I
doing this
wonder, in
with
the
ride
notorious,
sharing.
did it make a dent in the notorious CES taxi lines?
Oh my goodness, they can, absolutely. And especially if they go out there and they say, hey, share rides. A couple in the back seat, another person in the front seat. They have to have a driver right now. What to deal with the sociology of the operation, not necessarily with the technology of the operation. Same thing with Trenton Move. We have to have an attendant in the vehicles in the first year or 2 of operation to acclimate the customer. Okay. It's not that the technology can't do it. Technology can do it, but the customer has to be comfortable. So that's why they have the driver in there. And they did it, and they did it with ride sharing. And people must have loved the ride sharing, and which really, I mean, the amazing thing is that taxis, Uber, and Lyft operate with no ride sharing, even during CES. The taxi and Uber, Lyft, and so on lines are infinitely long. Yes, um, Uber and Lyft are offering you rides. If you want to ride within the next 5 minutes, it's at least twice, if not 3 times, if you're willing to wait 15 minutes. I mean, all they're trying to do is say, hey, yeah, we have some cheap rides out there, but everybody's on the expense account there. And boom, oh yeah, I want to go now. But they
Crazy.
could move everybody now if they made any effort to try to do ride sharing. Okay, how many places you have to go from the convention center in Las Vegas? If you're going to the airport, when people are there, anybody else going to the airport, hop in. None of that going on. It's amazing. Well, I understand why, is because the people that are paying or feeding their families there, the drivers, get to make more, and more of them are employed. I guess.
Any
But
thoughts about the Tesla rising to the top in sales of luxury cars in the U.S.?
yes, I mean it's amazing that a company coming out of nowhere, basically 10 years ago, it didn't exist, is now the leading seller of luxury vehicles in the US. When's the last time an American car maker did that? I don't know, 50s, 60s? No, I guess it may be the 60s. I think by the 70s they weren't. I mean, it's amazing. So yeah, Tesla, taking it on the chin lately. The stock is down. Everybody's unhappy with Elon because of whatever. But my goodness, those cars are being purchased by folks, not, and the folks are, I guess they're happy they're buying them. Otherwise, they'd be returning them. And if they were returning them, we'd hear about it. People would be writing about it.
Right.
So I guess, yeah. I mean, congratulations. It's nice to see a U.S. car maker, come back to the top in the luxury brand.
There's now footage online, Alan, of a Thanksgiving Tesla crash on San Francisco's Bay Bridge. 9 people were injured. And you have some observations after watching the video that's up online now.
Yeah, there are videos online that show it because, of course, there are traffic cams running. But if you look at the video, the cars go on there, and, its right turn signal is on when it first comes into the scene from the rear. Then the left turn signal comes on. Then the car starts changing lanes to the farthermost left lane. And then the brakes go on. I don't know. I don't know what was going on. It just passed, an exit. There seemed to be confusion, and the chances that confusion is coming from the automatic control system. Yes, there is a chance of that. Okay. But I think that chance, the probability of that is much lower than the probability of something else going on.
So as we said at the top, we have more to share from CES and our friend Ken Pyle at the Odi. First, Holon and the autonomous mover, as they call it, people mover or shuttle that it brought to Las Vegas.
We're here at CES 2023. We're in the Holon vehicle. Dr. Kornhauser and Gregory Trandell are going to have a conversation about what this thing's about.
So that can you give us an introduction to how you've gotten here and so on?
Oh, certainly. The Holon vehicle is an electric level 4 autonomous people mover. So what that means, autonomous level 4 means that there is no brakes available, there is not a steering wheel, but it operates fully autonomously under conditions. Under conditions is generally for a geofenced area.
So this is what we're interested in, where you designed this to be a how many seated vehicle and with opportunities for standees too and crush loads. Tell us a little bit about the passenger size.
It is. We will have a 10 seated passenger and then 5 people that can stand. The interior that you see here is what is our premium interior. We will be launching with one that is more for public transportation, but this is an image of what you can do with it, because there will be additional markets or opportunities like homeowners associations that would like to reconfigure or have a different feeling for it. So this is what the premium look would be.
As everybody knows, we're coming at this with respect to trying to provide mobility in communities, and if you want to call it transit, we'll call it transit. We prefer to call it autonomous transit networks. kiosks we've done and told so many, but of course we will want a premium interior because of course the people that are looking to move do probably deserve it and should have it. So we sort of like this concept, the size, the opportunity to be able to, especially if we look at the demand in places like Trenton, the peaks actually occur twice, 3 times, and maybe 4 times. They occur going to school, coming from schools, because we intend to, the children, they can't drive, most of them,
Right.
deserve to have some high quality mobility. And then of course, part of the Trenton Moves project serves the Trenton Transit Center, which means access not from Trenton all the way up and down the corridor, New York City, and so on and so forth, and in fact Newark Airport into the world and Las Vegas and who knows everywhere else.
To support your points and your needs, as you'll see as it goes through the display up here above, there's 2 use cases. One is inline loop, which is a dedicated route which you set. You set it based upon your needs of where it needs to go and the timing, and you can then adjust that. The other one, as you had mentioned, which caught my ears, was children needing to go to school. And the parents work, but they need to be ensured that they're getting from point A to point B, and you don't want the doors to open in a location or a position where they don't expect it to. Ride pooling in this case would be what you're referring to.
Our interest looking forward is to have the interest as 24/7. We like to say 350 days a year.
Okay.
We would be very happy with 350. And who knows what year, 2832 we'll get to 365.25, but we can get an enormous amount of value out of providing high quality mobility with high quality interiors 350 days a year. My goodness, it will be appreciated by the community, our perspective.
Yes. So, another couple of points that you talked about, the vehicle itself being electric and that it can go into smaller areas that the large buses could not.
Sure,
Right.
of course, and sit parked at a kiosk waiting for people to show up, as opposed to running around empty. I mean, we understand all that. At least we think we understand all that, and from the design of the vehicle, we think it is enormously attractive.
Well, thank you for that.
No.
And as we were talking a little bit earlier, this could be supplementing the current transit that is already in place, or to be the main source of transit.
Well, we think it will be the main source of transit. There isn't much to supplement the kiosk in Trenton. We're not going to take away ridership from the New Jersey transit rail operation up and down the corridor. My goodness, no, that's not what we're looking. We're looking to complement it, and I think that's to us, we think a real appropriate vision for these kinds of things, or at least one vision. There are, of course, other visions, but at least one.
Another thing, part of our vision, as you had mentioned about it, is that fewer cars. I originally come from the automotive industry, so I support vehicles because it's what got me my educations. But
Sure.
I realize that in large cities, more green space is necessary.
Yeah.
And this can be a replacement for a vehicle for someone that's living in the city because of the flexibility of it and the frequency.
We of course believe that. We think that we think about Trenton with 100 vehicles, 50 or 60 kiosks. That's the beginning. Serving 15,000 person trips per day, but that's less than 10% of the total addressable market. The rest of that addressable market, much of which is also people that don't have access to cars, but it's people that will leave their cars on the driveway.
Yes.
Or, because, my goodness, if I'm commuting to Wall Street from Trenton, I mean, I have to drive my car to park at this station, take the train to get my car. But if this is available, sure, walk access to my home, walk to it, takes me. When I get off the train, there are ones that take me and my neighbors back home. Why would I deal with my car? We're all within that that space.
Right. And our intent when building this is automotive grade. There have been several other companies that have had some difficulties in the launch and in the sustainability of how to continue to manufacture. That comes through what is UTCO, total cost of ownership.
Okay.
And that's what we're focused on when
Excellent.
we get this to market, the cost of ownership for either the city or the company that deploys it, and ultimately the rider base. The rider base needs to be able to use it, and that's
Well,
where, go ahead.
We agree, and we think that that's the appropriate way to go. And again, our view on that, when we look at the simulations that we've done with vehicles and ridership and so on, if you end up, my goodness, being able to deliver 100-person trips a day out of a vehicle, and you do that 300 days a year and so on, you take whatever the capitalization costs are, and you divide it by that big number of person trips, my goodness, it's down in the it's 10 cents. It's order of the 10 cents. It's not order of $1. It's not order of $10. You look at a 53-foot bus, my goodness, most of the time it's empty. It's rarely full, and it's riding around empty. And if you look at the productivity of even of a bus with that thing, they don't get 100-person trips a day. So anyway, we've gone through much of that, and we really appreciate the fact that we think this is an opportune vehicle to bring to, and it's not only Trenton. We look at Trenton. We have other Trentons, right? We have Perth Amboy. We have Patterson. We think we have Jacksonville. I mean, we got, when we were all down at the Florida AV conference, we got a lot of interest in Jacksonville, Tallahassee. There are 100 cities in the United States for which this is an opportunity. And of course, we think that this started exponential growth, scale, profitability for everybody.
I also wanted to let you know I had some takeaways from the 2022 smart driving cars. That's
great. I mean, we pumped this. I'm sorry, but
well, no, it is. Let me finish real quickly. Is that on the smart driving cars and also the Trenton Moves, there was something that struck me that I thought that our company was not doing enough of, and this was being inclusive. There was a gentleman there that he was blind. I don't remember his name.
Neil.
Yeah,
He's blind also. Or,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great guy, right? Yeah.
That is part of the inclusivity that we have now built into it, which we continue to consult people that are visually or hearing impaired. And in this case, we also have automatic deployable ramp. So ADA compliant.
Well, we're looking to help you on that because we're thinking that the only place people really get on and off this thing is at kiosks. In other words, and since I guess you go there is no frontwards or backwards, you can go in and go. I mean, it's the same thing to you, isn't it? Or
it is not. It is not, because this is unidirectional.
Okay.
So it will go one way. It is rear wheel driven,
okay,
front wheel steer.
Okay, but we can evolve to that. I mean, hey, if you look at the cars that are out here, they're not the cars that were out here 50 years ago or 75 years ago and so on. Things evolve. But even with that and pulling up to a space, we expect that the curb space, curb height at the kiosk matches this exactly. So that therefore, tell me why we can't, why that's not a good idea. Go ahead.
No, you can. And let me a couple things.
Okay.
This has an air ride suspension.
Okay.
Give us comfort, smooth, silk. When you're going down the road, you don't get the bumps, right?
Okay.
It has a double wishbone air ride suspension,
Okay.
which is usually in premium vehicles.
Okay.
So you get a comfort level that also gives us premium feel.
Okay.
That also, with the air ride suspension, allows the vehicle to kneel when necessary. Kneeling it can lower like the big buses do.
Sure. I mean, you can match it if you don't do it. If the curb happens to not be, then you can match to it. I mean, I'm suggesting the opportunity to basically have an easy way to get wheelchairs in and out.
We will
ramp or not include a ramp is relatively easy to do.
Right. And in the deployment in your area with BEEP, that we would set the area exactly where it will stop.
Sure,
if there's a curb
right.
or not a curb,
right.
we can adjust for that,
right.
because the
right.
ramp will support either one.
Right.
When do you expect to go into serial production with this?
In late 2025.
Okay, and what do you look at? How many are you looking to produce? Can you say that?
At this time, we
Yeah,
don't release the production
right,
numbers,
right.
but we have a slower ramp-up curve.
Okay.
And then we expect that that's going to grow significantly because people like yourself and Trent Moves are getting a lot of demand.
The idea is to basically start out with order 100, and if in fact we are able, we think that of course at the beginning that there has to be an attendant on board. Okay?
This is going to be the best, and for a couple of reasons. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Is that the attendant is there for educating the people.
Exactly.
It's okay, it's going to come to a stop, be prepared, but it's also there just in case as you define that fixed route, because you're going to be in mixed traffic, that they're there to handle any situation. Once it goes into full autonomy, where it's planned and you already have the history.
He said it better than I could say. Right? Exactly. We're the same thing. You know, there's been a lot of work done on the technology part of this stuff. There's been essentially no work done on the psychology. And the reason one needs, at least we believe one needs an attendant, is to deal with the psychology of the customer.
To talk more, we can go into a conference room. We'd just like to get some
Yeah.
other
Yeah, no, sure. So thank you very much.
Alan, interesting company. You got to ride. Well, you got to sit inside anyway.
Yeah, we got to sit inside. We got to look around and kick the tires a little bit. And yeah, it's a very nice vehicle. And of course, in terms of access and egress and so on, it's tall. And it has it's on a little bit of a larger size, but it very well be appropriate. And yeah, it's. The issue is with all these vehicles, you know, it has to be able to operate driverlessly, you know, without a driver, my contention. If it can do that, you know, fantastic. If it needs a driver beyond just the psychology of acclimating the customer, then we might as well just have a driver. What do we need the technology for?
Right. And we encourage people, if you've skipped over it, go back, watch that interview. Then instead of moving people, you caught up with a company called Ottonomy. It's Ottonomy, which is making an unattended all-wheel drive robot to move things, really a delivery vehicle of sorts.
Yeah, it's really a sidewalk delivery vehicle.
About 3 feet tall or so, something like that.
Right. And there's some on the market. This is another one. It's very interesting. What's very interesting about it is it basically can turn on a dime because it has 4-wheel steering on that. It can, and so in terms of its maneuverability to avoid pedestrians and so on and so forth on sidewalks, it's really good. It actually has a little ramp and so on. It can deliver things and slide things out the back. If you know you can get to that point of doing the delivery, that you know the challenge of the of package delivery is in part the last 50 feet, and they're trying to deal with that. You can do more than 50 feet. You can do maybe even a half a mile. But the idea would be to have these things be able to go from a staging area and deliver things much the way the postmen work, at least in Princeton. The postmen or the post women, they have a car or a truck in which they carry all this stuff, and they park it on one block and put a bunch of things in their bag, and then they walk the block. So this thing would be walking the block or a little bit farther, and it's a very interesting idea. And for certain places and certain neighborhoods, can do a major part of the delivery.
Let's take a look, courtesy of our friend Ken Pyle.
And I sure would like one of these things following us around, helping us carry things around. Rithika, why don't you tell us kind of what this thing is, your latest Autobot, I believe it's called.
This year, we unveiled autonomous delivery robots, Autobot Yeti. These Autobots are meant for delivering fully autonomous items to different type of customers like retailers, food and beverages, and also e-commerce. One of the most important things which we brought in for this CES is that these robots can also auto dispense the packages to your doorstep or to any integrated lockers. So that's what we have this year.
And it's a great advancement from last year's. And Alan, this is the first time you've seen it. What were your impressions? You heard the press conference a minute ago?
Well, I of course like the fact that it could pivot on a point and do a 360 turn and basically be the maneuverability aspect that I think you have to have. You need some maneuverability, especially if you're putting this thing down the sidewalk or wherever you're doing it. So I appreciated that. I just thought that the design, I think, to me, I consider it modular. Whatever they happen to have on the platform on top is, for one particular application that fits best, and all that is redesignable. And I think you expressed that very well in terms of how many slots and whether or not you do the delivery piece or not the delivery piece. The delivery piece is really important because otherwise you need a person there. In some places you have the person available, in other places you don't. And so that you can hit the you don'ts, having the ability to deliver it is sort of an important thing. I asked the question about whether or not they had thought about putting this on a larger driverless, of course, delivery vehicle, an Amazon type delivery system or a U.S. Post Office delivery system, where basically it does the neighborhood delivery from a mothership that has this, and the mothership loads it and then it delivers it. And of course, as we know, one of the, for delivery, or I don't know what percentage of Amazon's deliveries can be done between midnight and 5 a.m. When you don't have a person there, and now you have an ability to deliver it, why not get that done while you don't have to worry about Elizabeth walking her dog or other people on the sidewalk? I mean, the infrastructure is sitting there available, not being used, and do it. And you have a certain amount of flexibility. I know we all want our packages, the next minute, but come on, I mean, let's get real. So those kinds of things. So I guess.
Great observation.
Yeah, no, but I think all those things are really nice, and I of course I like the modular aspect of it. I was going to ask, the other place, we can do this out there in the public, but in the private, in the warehouse. I mean, you have all these warehouse, and all these conveyors. And sort of the conveyor is more of, it's at best a many-to-one type efficient system. But what you end up having is really a many-to-many. So, you can't have a conveyor many-to-one, then distribute. But in fact, you may have, sort of a satellite part of the many to satellites, and then satellite to then the many, for which this, because of its flexibility and handling very, satellites to satellites, can sit there and do the hopping. And then if you put this in a protected environment, then, you can go nuts, right? Can't you? Or am I missing it?
Yeah, I think that's a very valuable piece because there's a background story to it. So the co-founding team, half of the co-founding team was from autonomous warehousing side.
Yeah.
Half of it was from autonomous driving side. So we came in both from warehousing and autonomous driving on roads. Yeah. So we found a middle ground, which is delivery. Yeah. And when we started exploring that, I think the market potential for delivery is much larger than any logistics within the control spaces.
Sure.
And it is challenging. So right now we want to focus on something which is not 100% solved by any of our competitors, so that we have the lead ahead. And warehousing, very interesting space, very competitive space, both in terms of quality and pricing. So that's where, at this point in time, we just want to focus on delivery, not to spread too thin.
Yeah, I think that's all valid.
And you started though in the airports, right? In a kind of a semi, it's not really a private, but it's a kind of a enclosed space. And you've expanded that. With this, are you planning on both indoor and outdoor?
Yeah. Now the platform is exactly the same, both for indoor and outdoor. So we started with Cincinnati International Airport. We just finished up our first round of pilots at Pittsburgh Airport. And we are already live at Rome International Airport. So that's our first entry in Europe. That is a gradual way of repeating more and more airports over the period of time. So we are on track.
I have a quick question because I could have used it the other day when I needed a sandwich and I was a long ways from. So the question is, with that ramp, are you going to be dumping sandwiches and stuff, or is there a different mechanism for doing that?
The ramp won't be used for for the airports.
Okay.
But specifically, the ramp or the auto dispense is basically used for dispensing e-commerce packages to the doorstop or lockers.
Yeah, he gave the good answer to the dispenser. The dispenser is when the human's not there ready to take it. If you're ready to wolf down your food, you want it and you can grab it. Okay, you don't need it dropped on you. So anyway, he gave the good answer to that one. And,
my fault for not being there. but Alan was listening, so that's one of the things. The difference from last year is you're now part of the Urban Robotics Foundation, and tell us a little bit about that. I think because that deals with the human factor, right?
So Urban, Robotics Foundation Group basically helps us tremendously to orchestrate a framework in which different type of robots can coexist and still have a same streamlined aspect of safety, of accessibility, and both technology-wise and usability-wise. So I think it's a great effort, and it takes a village to make that change, and that's what the Urban Robotics Foundation is doing right now. And we are on track. We will be pushing out an ISO standard pretty soon, and that is going to be the first one for any public robots.
Speaking of the deliveries, I guess you have in the postal service in Norway, right? Is using it.
So we did a very extended pilot with the postal department of Norway, which is Posten, and there we actually touched upon a use case which was first mile delivery. And within that use case, we bring in items from different sources to the hub where these items are kept into the vans for long last mile delivery. So we were actually solving a problem for the postal department to collect packages from different sources to deliver. So that's something which we did. And the good thing was that we started in bright sunny weather, and then the robots ran fully autonomously in snowfall, and also in heavy snow towards December. So I think it was a very, very fruitful pilot which we just finished, and now we're crunching more data to create a larger span out within postal in Norway.
This thought just occurred to me, Alan. Do you see something like this being complementary to maybe something like what you're doing with Trenton Moves?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, of course. No.
Right?
Yeah, of course. In the moving of goods and the moving of packages and so on, absolutely, and that's what we've sort of been discussing, and it can do that. I think, as he just pointed out with his previous answers, and as I suggested with the warehouse problem, there's a collection problem and there's a distribution problem. Both of them are short haul. Okay, now whether or not it's last mile or last 50 feet or last 500 feet or last 100 feet, it's that. It seems, one of the issues with the number of packages and the number of deliveries you can do here, the empty vehicle miles associated with this is non-trivial. Whether it's 1-to-1 or 0.8 to 1 or 0.75 to 1, it's non-trivial, I think, at least if I look at the use case and how in the heck it would end up operating and so on. So I think there are other ways. I sort of like the cascading rather than doing all the way from one end to the other, but maybe that's not the right way to work this. But in any sense, there is just an enormous demand for that last whatever chunk is, and extending that chunk longer probably gets you in more trouble. The net gain versus the net effort. You mentioned you wanted to do tough things. It drives me nuts when people want to do tough. Why don't we just do the simple things and be successful and make some money and then grow from that? I mean, too much of the hype around all this stuff is, oh man, I have to do San Francisco and do the curliest street in the world, whatever, and show my manhood and all that. Get out of here. I mean, once you find the real problems and do the real value, get on the value proposition, be successful, and then move from the success. Okay, but that's just my personal beef.
No, that's absolutely fine. But it's the labor shortage is still there. So
yeah, the labor shortage, and
it's real.
But it's in a lot of things. Humans aren't necessarily the right entity to do it. Okay, there are certain things we do very well, and it's very tough to find something else to do it.
Yeah.
Heavy lifting, we're not all that good at. Some of these other things we're not all that good at. And therefore, taking tolls on the New Jersey Turnpike, we're not all that good at, nor should we put people in that. Some of this deliver my lunch. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a fan, but that's me, I guess.
No,
sorry about that one.
It comes with different, demographies.
Yeah.
It comes with different, so many different things.
Right.
So one of the most important things which we actually also did was around curbside deliveries.
Yeah.
Which is bringing items from inside the store to just the parking lot. So it's kind of breaking down the bigger problem into a smaller chunk, where to the parking lot for the curbside pickup still makes sense.
Yep.
Still there is a staff which is moving in and out continuously to make those deliveries, and I think that's step one. That is extended to last mile and so on and so forth.
And that kind of gets back to the whole movable conveyor belt, right? The virtual conveyor belt, because a lot of the stores you'd see they'd have a conveyor belt from the second story that bring the goods down, right? This would replace that conveyor belt, right?
Maybe from the second story to the first story is fine, but then from there to have then another one and so on, it's sort of what I was suggesting in between, because this thing has the opportunity to do a many-to-many dynamically. It doesn't have to run a route. It doesn't have to just go between A and B. That's the fundamental opportunity here, okay, is to have the flexibility of doing the many-to-many in real time, okay? And so, where is it that otherwise you have people standing around, or people are only trained to do this, or whatever. So, to me, those are the kinds of problems which, I like the design, I like what you've done. I think this, the footprint is
good that it's coming from you.
Well, I'm a nasty guy.
I made you smile. That's good.
Yeah, and you were talking though about doing like 80 trips a day type of thing. I mean, I think
right now it's more focused around the number of deliveries which we can make during each hour. So anything, it always depends. It's a function of weather, distance, and everything.
Sure.
But on an average, anything between 5 to 8 deliveries an hour is something which
that's
we
kind
take
of
care
your
of.
business model to work. That's what you're thinking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, given the round trip distance, the speed, and so on, there's a limit to the number of these things that you do, and the number of individual ones in the tour that you can do. But the capacity limit is not necessarily the problem, because there are a few places in which you need big capacity. Right. What you need is, in most of these things, is the flexibility. Okay, and because if you have big capacity, then you can afford to put a human in there to take a big truck and drive a big truck. It's just like if you can fill a bus, you don't need any of these automated people mover type of thing. Problem is, very few places you can fill a bus. Enough times, except for half a trip. Never mind, we don't want to go there. But I think that's the opportunity, and in things in which you end up getting over 50, deliveries per day. You multiply that out by 300 days, you see how you distribute the capital cost of the thing. The capital cost component goes to zero, goes zero very quickly. So that's where you end up having to be, because, operating costs. There's management costs. He also admitted that, yes, you have to have a centralized system on top monitoring this stuff. Things are going to happen. You're going to have intervention that is successful.
I think this has been very helpful for telling us what you're doing.
So thank you for the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Alan, as you mentioned, there are others in this space, but some real potential here, maybe.
Sure. I mean, there are places where these can actually provide some value, especially if you can do unattended delivery. Okay. And there are certain places in which you can do unattended delivery. If there's somebody there ready to take it out of the thing, then when it shows up, that's fine. But if some of these things can also do the unattended delivery, then that's really interesting. Then what you can do is talk about delivery between midnight and 5 a.m. when, nobody's around, nobody's on the sidewalk, nobody's on the street. You have free range, and the safety challenges are greatly reduced. But for all these things, you've got to be able to make the last 50 feet without somebody there taking it out of there or taking delivery. So that remains a challenge.
Absolutely. So we want to again thank Ken Pyle. You can find him at Viodi, VIODI.com. Look for Viodi on YouTube as well. Thank you to CARTS, the Corporation for Automated Road Transportation Safety, for helping to make this podcast possible. CARTS is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to safe and high-quality mobility for all. You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, Amazon, TuneIn, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcasts from. Smart speakers can play us too, if you've got one. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with Alain Kornhauser. Thank you for listening or watching. Stay safe and safe travels, Alain.
Yes, thank you. And again, I want to thank Ken for all the assistance and so on, and running around with him at CES. It was a shame you couldn't make it this year, Fred, but we're all set for next year, boy. We're going to do it up again, right?